The meeting to order. I'll do a roll call. Jane?
Here.
Brian?
Here.
Larry?
Here.
Jeannie?
Here.
Bren?
Here.
All right. Notice of meeting.
Meeting was properly noticed.
I need a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adopting the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. So we're starting tonight with Zach Supke. I want to thank you for your time and for your interest in applying. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
We are a blessed district to have so many people interested, so many qualified people interested. All right, so we're just going to take turns asking questions. I'm going to start. Why do you wish to serve on the Pewaukee Public Schools Board of Education?
Well, having a daughter that is just beginning her journey, is in 5K, and having moved back into the district right next door, I can think of no better way to serve my community and be an example to my daughter on what it means to be involved and be a part of the fabric of the community.
Okay. I get the second question, which is, please highlight for the board your background and experiences that you believe will contribute to your effectiveness as a Pewaukee Public Schools board member.
And we only have this much space, so just let me know.
Gotcha, okay. Well, having been the communications manager here and worked alongside many of you, I believe that gives me a tremendous insight into everything that goes on in order to make this a top-ranked district in the state. Along with Mike and a handful of others, I was probably one of the few fortunate people that got into every building every day and interacted with every person from K4 up into grade 12. And that included PTO and athletics and folks over at Insight. So just being well-versed in everything that makes Pewaukee School District tick gives me a tremendous institutional knowledge and kind of leg up going forward, I think.
I'm sorry, can I quick ask a question? I'm a new school board member, and so you worked here?
Yep, I was a communications manager.
Got it. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Miranda before Miranda.
Right.
That's what I was going to make an assumption, but I thought I'd just clarify. Thanks.
Sure.
Along those lines. So when did you actually work here then? What was the time period?
It was 2017, 2019, beginning of 2019.
Again, thanks for putting yourself through this and for making that commitment for the time required to be on the school board. My question is, what do you perceive to be the role of the Board of Education?
The role is to empower everyone involved in the district to achieve the mission of opening the door to each child's future, and also to make sure that all the policies that this board and past boards and future boards have set come to fruition and are adhered to. And like I said, about empowering, I think the board, like when I was an employee here, the board was incredibly empowering to staff. I mean, that's why staff wanted to come here. It's a destination district because staff knows they will have the power to do their job, and the board will back them and give them opportunities that they might not have elsewhere. I certainly felt that way when I was an employee here.
How would you present your ideas and views to board members and administration to solicit their support?
Like any project or program or plan that you're coming up with any objective, you have a presentation, you have a plan, and whether you're presenting it digitally or orally or via print or however you are doing it in a group or a one-on-one setting, you prepare as much as possible and cross all the T's and dot all the I's and make sure you are exactly prepared for whatever you have to present. We had a pretty big referendum a couple of years ago, and a lot of planning and a lot of preparing went into that, and we talked to a lot of people, and so much work went into it that it was like an invaluable experience as a professional, as a person, and as a community member.
With a 7-member board, there are often times when board action is not unanimous on a certain vote. There could be times when your position would be a minority position which did not prevail in that vote. Given such circumstances, describe how you would, 1, interact with other board members after the vote, 2, respond to news media questions, and 3, work with administration after the vote.
I'll do the media one first. There's policy that the board president speaks for the district on board-related matters, and then the superintendent speaks on school-related matters. So I would defer all media to those two people for each situation. And then, I'm sorry, the first question, the first part?
How would you interact with board members after that vote?
Oh, like any vote or circumstance that doesn't go exactly how you want it, I'm very familiar with that. I have a wife and a daughter, and so I'm outnumbered on a daily basis. So you just have to roll with it and know that, like using the family analogy, whatever decisions happen in our household, it's always for the betterment of the household. And you can't get caught up on what you want, what you need. It's always what is best for the family. And this is a family, this community, this is like one of the most tight-knit communities. That's why we came back here. That's why Ella's going to be here for her whole school career. So you have to treat it like family, and things don't go exactly how you want. Well, you have to come together, and tomorrow's another day, and you have to regroup and tackle the next issue. I'm sorry, and then the third question, third part?
How would you work with administration?
Well, they're kind of a ruly lot, so the administration is awesome. You just, like I said in the opening, the board, I think, is here to empower them and help them do the best job they can and be the best professionals they can, and just be there to sympathize with them, empathize with them, support, listen is a big part of it, and communicate. Yeah.
What do you perceive to be critical issues facing the Pewaukee Public Schools in the next 3 to 5 years, which you believe the Board of Education must address?
These are in no particular order, but relevancy. When you are a top district and you have top programs and you are a destination district, it's hard to stay on top and keep that momentum and keep that going. When you have programs like Insight and incredible athletic programs and Pro Start and music programs that are award-winning, it's hard because the community expects you are always going to be the best. And so that's hard to stay relevant. So, especially in the world we're living in where it seems like change every day with technology, and who knows what jobs are going to look like in 5 years. Look what they look like in 2019 and now what they are. I'm working from home, mostly all the time, as I'm sure a lot of other people are. Never thought you would see that day. So what's going to happen next year? We have to be prepared. And so just to keep being relevant and keep being the best is difficult, as Mr. Rogers could attest to. And then enrollment is a challenge throughout the state. Luckily, there's been a lot of growth in Pewaukee and a lot of housing, but as I've learned in many talks with Mr. Gahan, there's not a lot of land left. And so we'll see what the numbers look like, but so far Pewaukee has not had as steep a decline as some of our neighbors, but it's always going to be a concern, and it goes back to staying relevant and remaining the choice for when people have kids here, that it's the number one choice, like no doubt about it. And then another huge challenge is to attract and attain top staff. There's never been, I think, a more difficult era right now that we live in to attract teachers when we know the declining numbers in universities. There's not a lot of people going into education, and then there's not a lot of graduates, and then do they want to stay in Wisconsin once they do graduate? So attracting the pool, it's super competitive, as we know. So that is probably a critical issue, number one, maybe for the district, because your teachers are everything. And then the after effects of COVID and mental health. And all of the challenges that I'm hearing that we're facing. I've talked to a number of people in the high school and middle school and even at PLE, and just the time loss that students had and were at home, and it's not like they can come back and obviously just jump back in and be social, and it's a challenge, and we need more mental health funding, and hopefully we're able to do that. And I know Pewaukee has a lot more resources than a lot of other schools, so I'm very thankful for that. And I've got to work alongside a lot of the professionals here, and they're incredible, and I'm really thankful for that. But they probably still have a caseload that is not too manageable. So getting more mental health resources for students and for families too.
As a member of the Board of Education, it is possible that you would receive a complaint from a parent regarding the discipline of their child or an interaction that occurred with a school employee. Describe how you would respond to a complaint directed to your attention by a parent.
I would follow the protocol set up by the board and the school. I would acknowledge the complaint. Like if it was an email, I would reply. And then if it was at the high school, I would direct it to Principal Sniff or Mr. Bursai, whoever the relevant person at the building would be. And then I would either connect the two parties or email one or the other and make sure that the student or the parent directing the complaint was heard, and I would follow up within a couple days with both parties just to see and make sure that that parent or student knows that we are following up and we care about whatever their issue is.
Thanks. So the question I have, excuse me, the Board of Education members interact with a variety of people, including community members, parents, staff, and other board members. Describe your strategies for resolving conflict with a group or an individual.
So if an individual came to me with an issue, I would first and foremost listen and let that person tell me everything. And then an important step is validating what I'm hearing and let them know that I understand and I empathize with them. And then, have a brief discussion or talk as long as needed with them, and then find out who else can help with the issue. Because most times, probably all the time, when someone comes to a board member with an issue, it's got to be solved by a staff member. So find that person as quick as possible and get the communication going. There's nothing better than getting 2 people together, 3 people, whatever the case may be, and just have them communicate. Preferably not over email or text, in person.
Thank you.
Sure.
If you would, describe the time commitment you believe is necessary to be a member of the Pewaukee Board of Education.
Whatever it takes. Whatever amount of time it takes. There's nothing more important than the work we're doing for our community and our children. So I hear people throwing around, well, it takes 20 hours, it takes 30 hours, sometimes it's 15. It could, that could very well be, but there could be months where it takes 30, 40, whatever it takes.
What are the personal characteristics you possess that you believe would help you be an effective board member?
I think during my time here, I demonstrated that I'm a team player and do whatever it takes for the district and for the families living in the district and the students. I think one of my first days, I was walking around just getting the lay of the land, had my phone taking some pictures, and I saw a bunch of people installing the Horizon they have playground equipment. And I didn't know half of them. I think Mr. Gahan and a few folks were out there and sweating. It was pretty warm. So I put down my phone and I started, what can I do? And 3 hours later, we had the thing installed. And Amy Pugh, who was our tech director and my boss at the time, came by. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I don't know, helping out." Anyway, it's an anecdote. Whatever it takes, there's no task too big or too small when the mission that we're all striving to accomplish is on the line.
How have you been involved in your child's education? Ella's just starting out. And how have you played an active role within the educational setting?
So I have a son who's 25. He went to Brookfield East and Elmberg schools. So I was very active in his education. And I think the most important lesson I learned as a parent is just be there. Whether it's dropping off or picking up, we drop off and pick up every day. And attending conferences, obviously, although that's not obvious to a lot of parents, I guess. But just being, and never having my phone on at an important meeting.
Sorry.
Didn't even miss a beat on that one.
Right. But attending games and musicals and practice and being that taxi service that we talked about. It's not, we call it a taxi service, but it's an incredible job that we get to do. And before you know it, they're 25 and they're living in another state. So you don't get to do that anymore. So with Ella, she's going to kill me for keep saying her name out loud. She's 5 and I hear it all the time already. I love going in her classroom as much as we can, and we're going to volunteer to chaperone on our Rudolph trip coming up at the end of the month, and just being there, and when she comes home and she had a bad day, be there and empathize and listen and validate what she's feeling, and get up and do it all again the next day because it's the best job in the world. Besides being a Pewaukee board member.
Good answer on that.
My last question, Zach, is do you have any questions of us?
Yes. What is your biggest challenge as a board this year, but looking into the next couple of years as well?
It changes with the seasons and with the time of year. For me, it's probably just trying to stay on top of everything that's coming at us. Understanding it, fully being able to research it and look into it and that type of thing.
Given the fiscal situation that we're coming to, could be a fiscal cliff after the ESSER money came from the response to COVID, we might be put in a position to make some hard choices financially. So I think we're looking at that. And I would echo your concern about finding talent to keep this district going because it is getting harder and harder to find good teachers.
And how do you stay competitive? I mean, you can only spend so many dollars and you have to allocate them in certain areas. It just, leave that to Mr. Gahan, right?
I think for me, Zach, it's making sure as a board that we've come up with enough services to services children for their mental health, because that's such an important thing nowadays. And we've come a long way, but I think we need to go further yet. But again, money comes into play too. And talent, finding talented people to provide care.
Right. Yeah, there's long waiting lists, unfortunately.
As Stacy said, I think it is all the time that you put into preparing for board meetings. It's going through the materials, researching, asking questions so that you're as knowledgeable as you can be on all those subject matters. But also it's learning how to say no, because since I got on the board, I'm driven to volunteer. And sometimes it gets to the point where you have to remind yourself it's okay to say no.
And this board does a really good job of getting out and being in the schools and being at events and, yeah, so applaud you for that. That's very important because, you know, as you can see how many people are at board meetings and actually see you, but so you have to get out there and, that's another way I would engage people as a board member.
So my kind of perspective on this is very similar to some of the other comments, but I typically have been kind of like in the lead role relative to board and superintendent goals. And so we try to, again, make sure that we're staying relevant in terms of our strategic plan and sticking to that. And I think that has served us well. So making sure that we have some of that continuity and consistency over time back to our mission, opening the door to each child's future. But the last couple of years have created some really big roadblocks, I think, or some big challenges that are out there. And one of the ones that Steve Dankert and the folks of us who worked on the board goals, superintendent goals, was addressing the learning loss that came as a result of COVID, and also some of the behavioral health, mental health challenges that went along with that, because we had a lot of kids that were just not used to functioning and working at home and all of those things, and some of the social interaction skills that probably got missed as a result of some of that. That triggered a lot of things that were there, and we've got some issues that we're, again, continuing to work on and deal with. It's not that we're not aware of it, but sometimes it's just bigger than what we realize what's out there. And then the other part of it is kind of, again, tied into with this whole mental health, and I still haven't got my head around it, but whether it's the mental health, anxiety, and or grief that's out there. And actually tonight on the way driving in, I heard a little bit of a report about the fact that, you know, historically, counselors would talk to kids about, have you experienced a loss, or was there a death in the family, or anything like that? Most of the time, the kids would say no. But in the last 2 years, it was like, yes, you know, grandfathers, mothers, fathers. I mean, there was a lot more death going on out there. So there's this whole ability to cope with and deal with grief or a sense of loss that are out there. So, I mean, there's just a lot of factors, I think, that are playing into the mental health. And it's one of those where, boy, we're struggling to get our arms around that one, so, but.
So I asked about challenges. What do you see as the biggest opportunities? In like a positive sense, not like we have an opportunity to be better providers of mental health, but.
I think you struck on it really earlier in terms of right now, Pewaukee's been in a situation, as you saw all the building and construction, we've been able to maintain enrollment growth. That helps a lot. We're also able to pull in students in terms of the open enrollment. That helps us out a lot in terms of doing that. So, and then quite frankly, I mean, great faculty, staff, and community involvement and engagement, those things are really, really good and has helped us a lot. And we've had some very, very strong basketball programs and football programs and have accomplished things that were never, ever even thought about possible. I mean, you think that Coach Lecker had been here for like over 50 years, but a year ago was the first time ever to go to a state football tournament kind of thing. And boys basketball, girls basketball, all those programs have done very, very well, so.
I've found the opportunity to advocate for the staff. And I don't say that in the sense that they've had a horrible work experience and they need an advocate. I just say that in the sense that I've been around for so long that I know a good number of them. And so I've been able to really understand not only their roles, but their challenges and hopefully have a voice for them when we're talking about policies and issues.
Yeah, that was eye-opening for me. Like I said, I was able to go into virtually every building, mostly every room, and you learn so much when you're there and you're seeing it in person. You go, wow, this is what your challenges are, or this is the great work you're doing. Yeah, it's a real benefit.
I have a question kind of back for you, and I think you were the one who might have been reading that book called Brandy. Is he around that?
Yeah.
When we started the branding.
While you
Yeah, the
were
rebrand.
gone, look what happened. I mean, what is your take on what we've done in terms of the brand?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah, Ella is lucky. Yeah, we kind of timed it. Well, it's all going to be finished, and then she could start. No, it didn't work out that way, but it did. Yeah, it's amazing. And there's a reason why people want to come to Pewaukee. Not because it's all polished and it looks wonderful, but it looks wonderful and it is. So, yeah, it's going well.
Have a question for him? All right, Zach, we thank you very much. We really
Right.
appreciate your time and effort.
And thank you for all you do, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Zach.
Thanks, Zach.
Appreciate it.
Have a good night.
Have a good night.
I think he's in there.
Hello, thank you
Hi.
for coming. If you just give us a second to get ourselves organized here.
Absolutely.
I'm out of order. You are not Matt.
I don't think so.
Sorry.
You guys are running a gauntlet. I think I'm what, number 6, 5 or 6?
You are number 6.
Yes.
Oof, that's correct.
How do you say your last name?
Satyavelu. Generally, it's just Clinton.
That's easier.
People don't even try.
I've always worked retail, so on the name badge, it's real easy. Just the first name. That's all I need.
All right. Does everyone feel ready?
Yeah.
Good to go? All right. All right, Clinton, thank you so much for taking the time to apply and for coming in here tonight to meet with us. We really appreciate that. We are a very blessed district to have so many people interested in serving on this board. My first question is, why do you wish to serve on the Pewaukee Public Schools Board of Education?
Well, I've had the blessing and the opportunity to travel all over the country, all over the world. I worked for Walmart for 15 years, and one of my roles there at one point was anti-fraud, anti-corruption. So I got to travel around the world and talk to folks in those different business units that we had over there, and I got a chance to learn a lot about them. And part of my role was to understand their version of ethics, their version of integrity, but I also got a chance to learn a lot about what it is that they do and how they grew up and how the way the country operated. And I got a great appreciation for the American system of education. We get a lot of heat for not being as good as what some of the metrics might say others are, but there is definitely something magical about locally run schools where the population, the people who actually live here in the local area get a chance to have a say. And I think that's what gets me excited about something like this, is that I have a chance to have a little bit of a say, a good chance to hear, the different ideas, thoughts, creativity that comes out of the general population that we have here, and hopefully you leverage that to make a difference.
Okay. I have the second question. So please highlight for the board your background and experiences that you believe will contribute to your effectiveness as a Pewaukee Public Schools board member.
Well, number one, I'm a nerd. And that's that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think now that's a popular thing. We've kind of come above in the popular culture. But in all seriousness, I've been in retail for about 20 plus years. I started when I was in high school. So I was one of those kids that had a practically full-time job, every day after school. They used to make fun of me because I would do my homework right before I could, clock in, so I had like 20 minutes, I get to do that. But in retail, you get to meet a lot of different people, both on the customer side, but also on the employee side. During school, so I worked full-time while I was in college, and I ended up working at the local Walmart, and from there, grew into a position in leadership and management at the stores, and then went on to the corporate office and did more of the accounting, finance activities. But my heart's always been in that retail space, where you get a good mixture of folks. You get folks that are in school, right out of school, going to college, right out of school, never planning on going to college. And it's given me a good appreciation for the differences that we have in society and the different paths that people can take. And that's something that I think that I can add to the group that we have here, is that perspective of an employer, of someone who works with people at various different levels of education and with various different needs for education. If you're going to be a plumber, you may have a very different need for education than if you're going to be a science teacher somewhere. And that's a perspective that has stuck with me over the years, especially as I've moved into roles where you're looking at demographics of the workforce and trying to plan, how you're going to take care of the different, employees or associates you might have. I've got experience on multiple boards and multiple committees. I worked with the Northwest Arkansas Women's Shelter to help them get their thrift shop that they would use to help fund their activities, help get that in shape and a little bit more profitable for them. Worked with a local charity called Safe and Sound in Milwaukee. They do a lot of work to try to connect police with the underprivileged and mostly African-American parts of the Milwaukee area. And that was a committee to help put on their gala that does a significant amount of their fundraising. I'm currently the president-elect for the Chamber of Commerce that serves Menominee Falls and Sussex. So I live here in Pewaukee. I work at Kohl's, so I support the greater Waukesha community through that. We're hoping to expand maybe into the Pewaukee area at some point, since I think the chamber here has since folded. And that's actually the role that I think is going to add some significant value. As part of the board of the chamber, I've gained an awful lot of experience working with the superintendents that we've got in the Menominee Falls and then Sussex-Hamilton district. Presiding in that area during the pandemic was fascinating. And the things that they would need, the information that the business community could help with, and just being able to hear a little bit about what's going on within that world really sparked an interest. I realized that there's potentially some extra value that I could provide to this group and to this school district. My background, even though I said retail, I'm an accountant by trade. I work in our internal audit team. We don't like to call it internal audit because that's scary, so we call it enterprise risk services. Under that umbrella, I'm helping to make sure that our stores are safe, that we're following all the rules and regulations, and that we're operating very efficiently. Also look at our corporate financials, make sure that the financial statements are accurate, that we've got good controls in place, both financial and operating controls. I am also head of our ethics team that we have, if you will, partnering with our legal and our associate relations group, which is essentially an HR function. So a lot of connection with how to manage fraud, how to manage investigations, how to do it in a way that's nice, that's respectful for everyone. And I think that's another attribute that will be somewhat useful. Then recently I took on our environmental area. So I don't know how familiar everyone is with the term ESG, but it's a very popular term within the business world. It stands for environmental, social, and governance. So those are big key functions that make sure that a business is doing business the right way. And as part of that, engaged with a lot of different NGOs and different teams that are working to try to make sure that the world's a better place, whether it's factories in China, factories here at home, just the environment in general, and then just making sure that we operate with good integrity. So that's my general background. The other thing that I think makes me somewhat, hopefully useful for everyone here is I've got 3 children in the district, one in Horizon, one at middle school here, and then one in high school. So I've got 3 kids that are engaged. One's in AP classes, and the other is in an intervention program. So I run the gamut of all the different types of programs. My youngest, who's in some reading intervention, was actually, I think, in a presentation that was done not too recently here So definitely have a little bit of understanding in all those areas. And then finally, as an auditor, you're trained to ask questions. I like to say I get paid to learn about everything that goes on around me, and then tell people who've been doing something for 50 years how they could do it a little bit better. It's a pretty fun job to get that. So I think that's a skill set here. I'm not afraid to ask questions. I'm also not afraid to dig in if those questions uncover something that maybe we need to fix, or maybe there's something that can be done to make things better.
Thank you.
Long-winded answer, sorry.
What do you perceive to be the role of the Board of Education?
Well, I think that the role of the Board of Education, especially in a community like ours, is governance. You got to make sure that we preserve what got us here and we're prepared for the future. And I think that the first part's very important. So understanding that there's been a lot of work that's been done to get us where we're at. This school district's amazing. We've got great results. We have happy kids, at least from everything that I've seen with my children and the sporting events we've gone to. My daughter's on the cross-country team. And even something as silly as, okay, they're cross-country and they're going out there and they're competing, but you're really competing against yourself in that sport. But just the vibe that our students have versus some of the other students in the other districts is pretty amazing. So there's something that we're doing right. So we got to preserve that, and then being ready for the future. You never know what's going to come up next, whether it's things like the pandemic, natural disasters, or even just getting us ready for the next wave of technology that's going to come in. What do business leaders need in their workforce for the future? Personally, that's been something that I've been very passionate about, because the skills that I'm looking for and the employees that we have right in our stores is very different now than it was 20 years ago. The level of technology requirements that we have for our associates is crazy compared to what it was back when I started. And that's only going to continue to grow. And that's not just for right out of school, that's right out of college, that's and beyond. So I think it's those two aspects. And then to do that, it's financial oversight, making sure we got compliance, making sure that the administration has what they need to do a good job. They're the ones running the show. We're the ones that are supposed to make sure that they've got what they need to do it well.
Thank you. How would you present your ideas and views to board members and administration to solicit their support?
Kindness goes a long way. Everyone here has a story, they have a background, they've got an expertise. And some of it's expertise that, frankly, the rest of us probably don't know. So having respect and being kind about thoughts, about making sure that if you have an idea, it's well vetted, that we've got facts behind it. It's very easy to have opinions. I'm a very opinionated person. I have a lot of ideas and thoughts on things, but to act on any of those, have to have done the research, have to have data, have to have support, have to have facts behind it. And even then, it's a hypothesis, it's a suggestion, until you get support from the faculty, the administration, the folks that are in the weeds that actually have to execute should have a say in what's going on, and should have a big part of anything that gets brought up. So before anything that I would have that might be a good suggestion, I think it would be some discussion amongst peers, and then primarily with the administration, understand, maybe, why do we do it this way? Is this idea something that would be good or bad, and maybe getting understanding of why, and then hopefully having some good data from others. The good thing is we got an awful lot of school districts in this country, so there's an awful lot of places to steal shamelessly from.
With a 7-member board, there are often times when the board action doesn't end in a unanimous vote. There could be times when your position would be the minority position, which did not prevail in a given vote. Given such circumstances, describe how you would, number one, interact with board members after that vote, respond to news media questions after the vote, and how would you work with administration after the vote?
Well, I'll tackle the second part first. The media, it's pretty clear. I think there's a protocol set, at least from everything that I've read. Really, it's deferred to the chair, and then and faculty, right? And in the case of most things, there's going to be would imagine, talking points disseminated so that we're pretty clear on what it is that we need to say, if there's a reason for us to say anything. So that part I feel pretty good about. Conflict with a 7-member board, I would hope that there's a little bit of disagreement on things, because that means that we're thoroughly vetting everything that we need to be vetting, that there's a robust set of opinions and thoughts and a diversity of thoughts that are being put out there. So I think that's an expected and a given, and that's not something that I have any issue with. I've been in the corporate world for almost 2 decades, and that's just the way things work. Your supervisor says something and you have to go along with it because that's the way it needs to be. You're on a committee. Most things are done at a committee level, and you're going to have a lot of ideas out there. Yours might not win, but you walk out of the room unified because you want that same level of respect if your opinion is what carries the day. You want others to be able to support you, and so therefore you have to support the rest of the group. Now, if there was something that was clearly an ethical or integrity issue, then there's paths to go about that. That's not there's a process, so that's the process that I would take if there was a concern about that. But otherwise, on a standard decision, you go along with the group. If you've got a concern, you bring it up in the proper time and place, not worrying about the individual that happened to have a different opinion.
What do you perceive to be critical issues facing the Pewaukee Public Schools in the next 3 to 5 years, which you believe the Board of Education must address?
Well, I'm an auditor and an accountant, so I always have to have my list here of things, and I got to have the notepad. It used to be yellow, but now I guess the yellow ones are kind of out of style. The critical issues that I see, one, in the short term, inflation and budget management. I'm preaching to the choir here when I talk about how things are so much more expensive now, particularly when you're in a larger organization like this. When you're making larger purchases, you really feel that pinch, and that's something that I know is going to be an issue probably for the next year to 2 years. So that's something that I think is going to be in the short-term horizon. Facilities and making sure that it's able to support a growing population. I would expect we had a lot of movement. Housing markets cooled down a little bit. I expect that we're going to see, again, some more movement in the next couple of years, and that's a growing population, and a growing population that may not look the same as it does now. I think right now the population of enrolled students is something like 20% minority, and I expect that could change. I don't know, but most likely it'll probably go up a little bit, and that may mean that we have different problems, different things to think of, different successes that we'll need to celebrate. It's just something that we'll have to be on the lookout for. Change means that it's something we got to monitor. And then supporting curriculum and programs to drive positive student outcomes, aligning with future work needs. So the world's a little different. Colleges are going to expect different things. Who would have thought that remote learning is a skill that we're going to have to teach, not only going through the pandemic, but now colleges are more and more remote. The workforce, the work world right now, more and more remote. So those are skill sets that we'll have to make sure that the students in the district have that background, that understanding. So that's something that we'll have to think through. And then not to be minimized, but the last one I have on my list here is staffing and engagement. So it's a very tough work environment. This is a tough profession to be in, not only at the line teacher level, where you're out there on the front lines, but also for the administrative staff. There's a lot of things to deal with, whether it's not enough people for the amount of work, parents like me that ask questions, where Dr. Katie gets emails every once in a while. It's just that the world that we live in is one where you get constant feedback, and that's an awful lot for educators and staff, and that's something that they're going to need our support on.
As a member of the Board of Education, it is possible that you would receive a complaint from a parent regarding the discipline of their child or an interaction that occurred with a school employee. Describe how you would respond to a complaint directed to your attention by a parent.
So when I was looking through the questions, I did chuckle a little bit at this one. So one of the great responsibilities I have for Kohl's is that I'm the person who gets all of the emails that are sent to the Board of Directors. So any of the complaints, concerns, or whatnot that come through there, I happen to get. So it's it's always a fun day when I open up that inbox and go through that. The number one thing that I've learned over the years is to listen. There's an awful lot of benefit in listening. One, you learn a lot of great things, and even if the issue that someone's bringing to your attention isn't exactly how they describe it, you're still learning something, that there may be some action that may need to be taken at some point, or there's an education level that needs to be done to help that person understand why that maybe isn't a big deal or isn't an issue. So first, listen, and then second would be to communicate that to the appropriate staff. You know, if it's an integrity issue that the board needs to know about, that's making sure that the chair has visibility to that and understands what's going on. If it's something that has to do with, you know, an issue with a child, then there's going to be folks here that are going to be better suited to manage that, and getting that to communicated timely is very important. And the last piece is follow-up. That's something that a lot of people miss in my experience, but that's following up to make sure that there was something done. And it may not be, there may not actually need to be an action on it. It may be something where it's, okay, we took it, we logged it, we do what we need to do with that. But just the pure act of following up makes sure that there's integrity in the process, and that you're able to communicate something back if the parent were to come and talk to you again, because you want that trust.
Thank you. So Board of Education members interact with a variety of people, including community members, parents, staff, and other board members. Describe your strategies for resolving conflict with a group or an individual.
So as an auditor, I tend to give a lot of bad news. So I've learned how to best manage that through trial and error. I've had things thrown at me in stores a long time ago, and I won't tell you which stores, but there's, you know, you're definitely touching on something that people care about. They care about their children, they care about their grandchildren, they care about the community at large. Everyone cares about education in some way, so there's a lot of charge in any of these topics, and that's something that I definitely recognize. The first thing, and this is similar to handling the complaints, is understand the perspective. Listen, get a gauge for it. It's not always easy, especially when there's politics involved, which unfortunately there sometimes is. But understand the perspective, and then try to understand what action they want. Because in some cases, they just want to be heard, and there's nothing wrong with that. In other cases, there's a specific action that they want taken. And once you get that understanding of what that action is, being able to state what the current position is. And the great thing is that a lot of things that come up here, we have some forewarning of what might come through, so we can have at least a baseline policy or position. But stating what the current position is, leveraging any talking points that have been prepared, you know, if there are any, and then making sure that there's visibility to whatever the next steps are. Because most of the time you probably can't, at least from everything that I've seen from the recordings that we have of our meetings here, and then my experiences in other roles, you often can't solve that or problem or make that decision right that second. There's a process, the right people have to be involved. So giving visibility to what the next steps are tends to cool folks down a little bit.
Describe the time commitment you believe is necessary to be a member of the Pewaukee Board of Education.
Well, I assume it varies, probably in relation to some of those political things we're talking about before. But I could see with the meetings, the prep, subcommittee time, I'd say probably 10 hours a week or so, give or take, and that's a total stab in the dark. But I'm seeing some nods, so hopefully it's not too far off.
Can depend on how fast of a reader you are.
You did say 10 hours a week, though, right?
Yeah,
That's true.
What are the personal characteristics you possess that you believe would help you be an effective board member?
Being detail-oriented, having the ability to read through a lot of information, pick out the important pieces, be able to refer back to it, being a fact finder. Like I said before, I get paid to ask questions and seek new ways to make things better, and I think that's a good characteristic to have in a role like this. The experience in governance, I think, is important. That's something that I'm very passionate about, making sure that we're doing things the right way and not just the expedient way. And then consensus building. It's a lot of what we talked about earlier, is being able to drive consensus. You may not get 100% of what you want on something, but sometimes 51% is just enough. And this is a long-term establishment. So I think that the goal isn't, you don't want to change something that's this successful quickly. Any change, whether it's for the good or not, you need to do some slowly, methodically, and I think that that's the kind of mentality that I have, is like patience, being able to manage that. And I have a very thick skin, so being able to listen to others and channel their frustration into some positive action or the right action, whatever that may need to be.
How have you been involved in your children's education? And how have you played an active role within the educational setting?
So my father grew up in India, came over in the 70s, and went to college. That's where he met my mother. So I've got a kind of a mixed background. So my father grew up in a totally different educational system, and his way of training things was through a lot of memorization. We would get quizzed in the car when we were driving places, and we lived out in the country, so going anywhere was at least a 30-minute trip. So I got a lot of math questions managed by through that, because I was really good. Spelling was hard when English is your second language, but math was really easy. And I always thought it was funny, but it was fun for us. We'd get along, we'd do that. And then as I got older, I realized I do the same thing with my kids. We're on a long trip, and I'm giving them math problems, and it's hilarious when you've got 3 different education levels in the van, because you got to tailor it. And now we have to get to where I almost have to call out the specific person to answer, but it's a lot of things like that. It's the how to supplement. I don't need to replace what's done here, because there's so much that's really good that's done here, but being that parental supplement to help reinforce things, to help get the students that we have in our household to use the skills that are being taught, to reinforce that. A lot of work with my youngest on with a tutor to help make sure that he's where he needs to be. So it's making sure that we have the right resources, identifying where there's an opportunity, and then making sure that that's addressed. There's also an awful lot of conversation at the dinner table. We tend to have a good conversation about, what'd you do at school today, which you guys have all had kids or been around a lot of kids. The answer is usually, I had a good day, or I didn't have we did things. You don't get that, you have to dig a little deeper, and that's part of what we do, is try to dig a little deeper to understand, well, what did you work on in social studies? Oh, that's interesting, you're doing a paper on George Washington. Well, how is it angled? What is it that you're learning about him? And then broadening that discussion so it's built on, so that they feel like there's some value on it. And they know they're going to get quizzed later on when they get home, so they have to pay a little bit extra attention. I'm one of those mean parents that makes my kids do Khan Academy during the summer to make sure they don't fall behind, and we tie it in with other things they're working on. So kind of have that tiger dad kind of philosophy in there, and just in general reinforcing what messages are done at the school. My wife does a lot of volunteering here. She used to be I'm trying to remember the exact title. Essentially, she was someone that was being read to by some of the students, and we kind of divide and conquer on that.
Expert listener.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah.
It wasn't in my list of things to have written down.
My final question is, do you have any questions of us?
So auditor, so I definitely have some things that I knew I needed to ask. But the first one, I think this is a general question, is if we picture ourselves about a year from now, and say you made the decision to bring me on, and I win election or re-election in the spring, when you look down the table and reflect, I would like to know what is it that you reflect on in a positive way, that, how did I add value to the board? What are you hoping that I'll be able to add value to the board, given the background and the discussion that we've had?
I was a CPA, So I appreciate your ability to be analytical. As Brian mentioned, school finances is a big deal right now. And so to have someone else on the board that could help analyze and understand the school finances would be phenomenal. But I also know with auditing, your ability to dig into an issue would be very valuable, and to really understand it and understand what's working, what's not working, and perhaps ways that things can be done better.
Great, thank you. And then, one of the questions that you had, I think was a good question, was about how do you manage conflict and whatnot, but I'd love to get perspective on, what is the culture of the board? How do you manage conflict? I'm sure there's been some conflict in the past. What are some tools or techniques you guys have used to get through it? I'm seeing some eyes, so I know something's happened.
I always remember the former Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan, and he used to complain that things would run better if school boards had adults on them. The idea that you lose a vote, you wait 10 minutes because there's another one coming. You just can't go lingering about something that you lost. There's too many decisions to be made to hold a grudge or be upset about something. So I don't see us having that issue in the 27 years I've been here. Some people have come on the board with their particular agenda, and it's a 10-minute conversation, and then they wonder what they're going to do for the next 3 years. So I think it's pretty much this board has always had that adult attitude, and just get to the work. You lost one, that's fine. There's another decision you got to make in 10 more minutes. So
There's never been any doubt that every person that sat on this board has the same goal, to serve this community, serve this district. And Larry, say it.
Our mission is to open up the door to each child's future, so can't go wrong with that.
Teed it up for you, Larry.
You did, that was nice.
Great. And then the last question I have is, how do you each keep a pulse of what's going on in the schools and with the admin team?
I can speak to that. Recently, I've joined what they call learning walks, and I've only attended 3, and it's a great experience. I've really enjoyed it. I look forward to it each week, and I'm also getting to know the administration a little bit by bit, and I get to sit in the classrooms, and it's really helping my learning curve as to the programs that they discuss or present to us each board meeting. So that was one opportunity that was suggested, and
Your face started beaming when you started talking about it, so now I've got to figure out how to get involved in this.
sit in a class with a new teacher. I've actually seen 2 of our new teachers.
Thank you. That's all for my questions.
I
I
think
didn't get a
Larry
chance
wants
to
to
respond.
Oh,
So I think when I look at it, and again, it's one of those things when we pull together the people that we want to work with on the board, and as Stacy mentioned, I mean, what's our purpose here? Really to open that door to each child's future, and that's the mission. So I mean, that embracing the mission and really understanding what that means. But at the same time, it's the achievements, student achievement things. We have a responsibility to our taxpayer community that's out there to make sure that the money is spent wisely in terms of what we do, and that we're getting the results that we want to get in terms of being able to make sure that our students really do get to open those doors out there and recognize that we have a wide range of students with a lot of different needs that are out there. So the collective wisdom of this board, and again, there's a couple accountants, there's a couple engineers, there's a couple of former teacher, and Brent, I don't know exactly all of your background, nursing background. So we bring a lot of different experience, and I think that that's one of the things, is that it's like you are going to be actively engaged, and so that year from now, that you're sitting here having a dialogue with us, and we're learning from each other as we go through that. The other thing is, and this is maybe a little bit different take on it, I think to make sure that we are reflecting the interests and the concerns of our community, and our community is the students, the faculty, but also the community members, making sure that we try to stay in touch with them and make sure that we're listening and understanding as to where we need to go, what we need to do that. So I think that some of those things are really a part of it. And I don't know if you're a CPA, but I did know that you were an accountant, and that's great. I mean, we can definitely handle that, but I think your background in what you do in the accounting world is just a whole different take than being a tax filer, preparer, or, doing corporate audits and those kinds of things. I mean, you've got a whole different sense of what's there. But yeah, I think it's our ability to work together and come together and be reflective of our community as a whole. So hopefully that can happen, so.
I love it.
I wanted to compliment you on your comment that you made about diversity of thought. I think that is so important. When you have a team that's working together to make important decisions, and these are the most important decisions, there are kids, right? And I think that it's important to have people with diverse backgrounds, but also diverse ideologies. Because as you say, when not everyone thinks the same, you're forced to look at that issue from multiple angles. And I think in the end, you make better decisions for it. So thank you for that comment.
And unfortunately, I'm not a CPA, but I am a certified fraud examiner. So similar kinds of things. I just never took that test.
Don't blame you. Horrible. All right, well, Clinton, we thank you very much for your time.
Thank
and
you.
for your participation.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you, Matt, very much for your interest in applying and for coming in tonight to meet with us. We know time is valuable, and I keep saying we are a blessed district to have this many qualified people apply for this position, so we really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
So we're gonna kind of take turns asking you questions. I'm gonna ask you the first one. Why do you wish to serve on the Pewaukee Public Schools Board of Education?
Yeah, so first, foremost, I have a very strong passion for the Pewaukee community, the school district, and just being an advocate for public education. I see this as a really great opportunity to contribute and give back to a community that myself and my family love so much. I want to share my passion and skill set with the board. I think I'd be a great asset with my background and skill set, and further develop an already very high-performing school district and see that into the future. Most importantly, here for the students and the children of Pewaukee. I want to contribute my time, skill set to ensure they're given the opportunity at the highest level of education possible. And personally, I am a father of two. I have a 5-year-old in PLE in kindergarten. And I have a soon-to-be 4-year-old that will be attending the 4K program next year. So I have two very, very young students, so I'll be around for another 14 years at least. And so that passion will only continue to grow. And It's very strong, and my interest in preserving and improving that school district in which I'm going to be a part of for a long time. I'd love to be a part of that and take the trajectory of that into the future. But ultimately, I want to represent the community of Pewaukee, parents, children, to make sure that all children in the district are given an opportunity to achieve the highest level of education possible. And I emphasize all children, regardless, each children has very unique, regards to learning needs and abilities, and we need to look out for all children and really leave no child behind. And I'm very passionate about that.
Thanks. I get to ask the second question. So please highlight for the board your background and experiences that you believe will contribute to your effectiveness as a Pewaukee Public Schools board member.
Sure. I have 17 years of experience in various business leadership settings that I believe could strongly benefit the Pewaukee Board of Education. I've held various roles across product management, sales, marketing, supply chain operations, manufacturing, and through those experience, I am lucky enough to get to work with a lot of young hires, recent grads from four-year college programs, 2-year, some right out of high school, and I get to work with them, and I get to see how they acclimate into the professional landscape and the strengths that they have, some of the gaps that they might have, and I get to have discussions with them about their things that they may have wished to had in their education that would have maybe better suited them to enter the workforce. So I'm lucky enough to be able to get to have that experience with a lot of young hires. And I think I can bring a pretty unique perspective from that realm, just with kind of the vast, being across a lot of those different segments of business. It's part of my everyday role to kind of collaborate across all of those areas of business. And I get to see that quite often. Through my work experience, I have to collaborate and communicate very effectively cross-functionally across those areas. So I'm very, very big on relationship building. I personally really thrive off of and love, building relationships and talking to different people across the organization. It's really important in my professional career to be out in kind of the community talking to consumers of our product, getting that feedback, getting that input, and then bringing that back into the organization and translating that into a product, which when you kind of think about it, it's a similar kind of situation in education where you're interacting with the community, you're seeing the economic landscape evolve, and you're getting that feedback and trying to bring that into policies and curriculums and integrate that into the education of students and make sure that they're well prepared for when they graduate and enter the workforce, or a 4-year higher education or 2-year higher education, whatever that might be. So I get to, there's a lot of adjacencies there with what I do in the private sector. My professional career and personal interests I have to stay very in tune with economic conditions and the economic landscape, which I think is very important considering where we're at in the world today, and the challenges that we're facing across the world, and we're stretching budgets and trying to deliver more with less, and keep delivering that high level where things may be constrained. Something that I want to note just from my background perspective, I'm lucky enough to have been able to personally kind of free up time for myself and to take a bigger role in the community, more active role in the community and my children's education. So I think my availability and my flexibility and my passion for this position is well suited for the board.
What do you perceive to be the role of the Board of Education?
The Board of Education ensures that students get the best education for the dollars spent. I perceive the board as a very critical link between the community and the school system. The Board of Education is ultimately responsible for the appointment of the superintendent, strategic planning, developing and adopting policies, curriculum, and the budget, including, overseeing any facility issues and advancements in facilities, those types of things. And most importantly, I think the board looks out for students and ensures that they are given the opportunities to achieve the highest level of education through those policies and procedures and curriculums that are adopted and set by the board. And ensure that all students are well-rounded and prepared to enter the workforce should they choose to right after high school or enter again into a higher education, a 2-year or 4-year program, just making sure that they are as well prepared as possible to succeed and as well as be a high-functioning member of the community. I present ideas in a very clear, concise, to the point manner. I'm a big believer in having very open and honest dialogue and gathering as much input as possible. Really being able to understand multiple viewpoints, because there are so many multiple viewpoints in the community and with parents and with children, and being able to understand those viewpoints and anticipate questions and concerns that will come up from each individual member. I kind of look across the board, and I'm sure you all have very different, unique perspectives based on your backgrounds and your experience. And I think the better you get to know and relationship build between your team members and the board members, you get good at anticipating questions and concerns that will really help them, ultimately make a decision on something that might come up. So I'm a big advocate of kind of the relationship building and really understanding each and every one of you and what is really important to you. I understand board meetings are often filled with probably very jam-packed agendas, and there's no time to be wasted. So I think doing your homework ahead of time and making sure that all of the members have the information that they need prior to make an informed decision, so you're not wasting that time during a meeting and kind of struggling, and just making sure that everybody has that information and you're doing your homework and providing that as best as possible. And then as you get to know each board member, some of you may have different methods of how you would maybe like that information presented. And regardless of the communication platform, I think being prepared, respectful, and presenting ideas really rooted in fact are all essential to soliciting support and getting alignment amongst a board with potentially differing views.
With a 7-member board, there are often times when board action is not unanimous on a certain vote. There could be times when your position would be a minority position, which did not prevail in a given vote. Given such circumstances, describe how you would interact with board members after the vote, respond to news media questions after a vote, and work with administration after the vote.
Yeah, I assume you're always striving for a 7-0 consensus, but I'm sure you get 6-1 and 5-2 and 4-3. If personally I'm on, happen to be on the minority side of a vote, I am 100% confident that as a board, we made the right decision. Because it's not about me, it's about the board members and your representation of the community and the parents and the students of the district. And I fully believe that regardless if I was on the minority side, we ultimately made the right decision as a team, because that's what we're here as. It's not personal, it's not about me. And I think, when you walk out that door, we are in alignment and support of what the board decided to do. And in regards to, outward media, I'm sure there's a procedure for that where I'm sure the board president probably addresses some of those media questions, but it's a similar, response. It's, hey, we made the best decision as a board in the best interest of the students with the information that was provided to us. And in no way does that create any animosity with other board members. And that is just, it's not productive. I've been I'm a member of teams every day, and it's just a dead end road. So you really got to check that at the door, and you understand each other better, and I am confident that this board makes the right decision on a majority vote, that is ultimately the right decision was made for the students.
What do you perceive to be critical issues facing the Pewaukee Public Schools in the next 3 to 5 years, which you believe the Board of Education must address?
I have several. I thought about this one pretty hard. I think the first one that came to mind was certainly budget management and the rising costs of goods and services. I see those economic challenges, continuing into calendar year '23 and beyond. And I think we'll need to get increasingly more creative through strategic planning and combating those costs and delivering an even higher product, even in the face of that. The other side of that is certainly the funding coming in. My understanding is that can be quite complex and sometimes unknown. So I think that can create challenges, some of that unknown, and especially when you have, I'm sure, a waiting list of students wanting to get into the Pewaukee School District because it's such a desired district. I think balancing some of those things and having those unknowns are a bit of a challenge. Along those same lines, I think there's certainly labor shortages that are still and will continue to be out there. And I think it's really important to ensure that Pewaukee remains a destination school for educators through workforce engagement and development. And I think that's a key focus area to make sure that it remains that destination place for educators where they really want to come here. I see members kind of coming from other districts, and I'm really happy to see students coming back and teaching. That was really, really neat for me to see and read about. So that's really great. And that doesn't is not just with educators. That goes across the board. That's school food services. It's bus drivers. It's maintenance workers. It's coaches. It's et cetera. Right. It's a lot of. It kind of spans the entire gamut. And I think those could continue to be challenges. And just making sure that the Pewaukee School District is remaining a high-performing district and really engaging with workforce and making it a fun and great and a great place to be, a great place to work. The next one I want to talk about is mental health of students and staff. I think this is incredibly important. I think it's often overlooked. Ensuring that we have the mechanisms in place to recognize those staff or students in need and providing them the critical guidance where it's needed. Along kind of with that is school safety. School safety, I don't think it's any secret of some of the horrible things that you see with violence in school districts. And I can speak as a father that to me, dropping my child off at school and being able to pick them up and see them smiling, running out of school is the greatest, knowing they're safe. So I think that, just continuing to secure the perimeter of the campus and communication and ensuring the parents that there are, plans in place to do that, and there's preparedness should, God forbid, something happen. So I think that's as a challenge moving forward. I wanted to bring up, something too about just, navigating the political landscape and just keeping a focus on policies and procedures that are in the best interest of children's education and that's appropriate for them and the community. I think obviously there's an increased focus on school boards from parents and the community, which is great. And I think continuing to build trust and transparency with the community as we move forward through effective communication and open board meetings and hearing the discussions and really communicating to the community that we're ultimately here in the best interest of the students and the children of the Pewaukee School District and the community. And the last one here is, I think, just continuing to evolve educational tools and curriculums as the professional landscape evolves. I'm really impressed with the PSD graduate profile, and I think I took a look at that, and I appreciate the work that goes into that, because that's really excellent to see as a parent. And I think I'm passionate about continuing, looking at that on a regular basis to make sure that you're evolving as the professional landscape evolves, whether that's through hard skills, soft skills, because that professional landscape is changing quickly, and it's changed greatly even through the pandemic, and we're continuing to see it change and get more challenging, and certain skill sets are needed more than others in some cases that we didn't see before. So I think that's a big passion for me, and just especially coming with my professional background and getting to see that and watching it evolve across a lot of different businesses across Milwaukee and Waukesha County. And again, supporting the trades, I want to mention that. I see that first and foremost. It's really big to me. It was big to me when I was in school. There's a lot of great opportunities and money to be had there, and that shouldn't be overlooked. And I think continuing to evolve programs that would help students get into the trades should they wish is really important. And along with that, teaching some skills about building your own business, because there's a lot of those opportunities in the trades. It's not just teaching the hard skills, it's how are you, kind of developing your own business and some of those skills that are required to do so, because there's great opportunities there in the trades.
Thank you. As a member of the Board of Education, it is possible that you would receive a complaint from a parent regarding the discipline of their child or an interaction that occurred with a school employee. Describe how you would respond to a complaint directed to your attention by a parent.
Parents want to be listened to and acknowledged. We are talking about their children, it's as personal of a discussion as it gets. And I put myself in their shoes, that if I was having an issue and I approached a member of the administration staff or someone on the board, I go into that with empathy, and it's exactly how I would approach it. I want to listen to them genuinely. It's not fake. I want to hear the issues that they may have. I take it very seriously. I would certainly try to gather as much information as possible, because sometimes those complaints can just be a misunderstanding, and if I can clear that up in any way, that's great. But I also want to make sure that there's, and guide them into kind of following the correct hierarchy of, was the problem addressed with the teacher? Was it addressed with the principal, the superintendent? Did it kind of go through the right steps before it just automatically becomes a board issue? And maybe it would if we can't get to resolution. But if I can't resolve that issue or clarify any of those misunderstandings, I think bringing it back and gathering more input from board members or other members of the senior administrative staff is certainly a way I would approach it. And of course, following up with them in a timely manner, because it's so important, because the last thing you want to do is talk to a community member, a parent, and genuinely be listening to them and then not have any follow-up. So I think that is really key, because that's exactly how I would want to be approached in that matter.
Thank you. I get the next question. Board of Education members interact with a variety of people, including community members, parents, staff, and other board members. Describe your strategies for resolving conflict with a group or an individual.
What has worked the best for me in resolving conflict is really through compromise and collaboration, getting the issues and facts out on the table in regards to really what's in the best interest of the children's education is crucial. Sometimes I think that's missed. You could get in the heat of something and you kind of forget you're there, because you're trying to make the best decision for the students and what's best for them and their education and to give them a well-rounded education. So whatever the problem might be, understanding the viewpoint through empathy, understanding multiple viewpoints, and really taking it in, because there are so many diverse viewpoints, which and getting those out on the table and talking through those. And if it's not something I can compromise myself with the individual group, listening to the viewpoint and bringing it back to the appropriate, like I said, senior administrators or the board would be my approach. I will say that, building strong relationships with community members and parents ultimately make this easier. And, I don't take that lightly. And when I think of the Board of Education, it's something that I would be very passionate about, is getting to know and getting out there in the community and speaking with parents and building those relationships, because ultimately that makes it easier to talk through in conflict resolution, a lot easier. And certainly just, empathy, being able to see the viewpoints of others, talking through those, and really getting down into the root cause of what's in the best interest of the student and the children.
Please describe the time commitment you believe is necessary to be a member of the Pewaukee Board of Education.
I believe this is 30 to 40 hours a month. And I think outside, I think you have your regular board meetings and subcommittees, and I think the prep is a big piece. I can imagine that there's a lot of time on that, spent on that, and it should be. I assume you get a packet of information prior to the meeting and doing your homework and understanding all of those, reading through that and saying, hey, do I have any questions? Is there any follow-up that I need to do? So I can ultimately come to the meeting to make an informed decision. And also knowing that coming to the meeting and hearing other things could also impact and change my opinion. So doing that homework, I think, is certainly a significant time commitment. But I also think that it kind of is what you make it, because I think outside of that, I think ultimately, like I said, getting out into the community, talking to parents, understanding what the needs of the community are and the economics in the area, and the more you put into that, the more effective board member I think you'll be, and I think that's just an ongoing thing. I think that's something that goes well beyond the 30 to 40 hours of just the prep and the meetings and the subcommittees and the conferences or events, school events that you'd attend. I think there's a lot to it outside of that can really strengthen you as a board member and make you much more effective.
What are the personal characteristics you possess that you believe would help you be an effective board member?
I'm very personable and polite. I'm very easy to get along with. I love to talk. Even this excites me. So I like to communicate. I work really well in a team setting. It's something I do every day and that I've excelled at in my professional career. I'm very dependable, reliable. I'm extremely passionate about the school district, education, and the Pewaukee community. I love this community, so I have a lot of passion for it. I have high critical thinking abilities. I like to get all the facts out on the table before I jump to a conclusion. I like to really be well-rounded in what the facts are, what the issues are, before you kind of jump to any kind of conclusion. I like to problem solve. Like I said, I love communication and relationship building, like getting out and talking to people. It's just something I like to do, and getting to know people. And I'm transparent and trustworthy. I have no hidden agendas. My agenda is representing the community, and the students of the district and the parents of the district. I'm here to represent the community, most importantly, the children of Pewaukee, and ensure they get the opportunity at the highest level of academic achievement possible and the best well-rounded education possible.
You have a child in 5K.
I do.
How have
do.
you been involved in your child's education? And how have you played an active role in the educational setting so far?
It's been so early. I think it's only been about 8 or 9 weeks, so I haven't had those opportunities yet. I look forward to them, but what I will say, I take an active role in my students' education, or my children's education at home. I'm a strong believer that instruction doesn't end at 3 PM when the bell rings and start up again at 8 AM the next day. I think there is, so many learning opportunities, especially with a 5 and 4-year-old, which can be challenging. And, obviously we're working on teaching those soft skills with morality and being polite and respectful. And, how to think and not exactly what to think. And, but we take every opportunity. I personally take every opportunity. We read to them every night. I'm a math guy. I love numbers and I love math. So I work on that maybe a little too early with my kids, but it was important to me. And we do a lot of addition, subtraction, and pattern recognition. I always liked that, kind of the IQ type stuff. And that's really, really important to me. So we work on that on a regular basis. Something that I really look forward to that I hope to get involved with Pewaukee is like a student mentorship program. I see a lot of value in that, and I would love to do that. That's something that I would have a lot of passion for, and it's something I wish I had as a student, not only in high school and college, and to have a mentor or even multiple mentors that may have similar interest in their professional career or even personally, just someone to talk to and talk through and navigate any issues that might be coming up. I look forward to that, so I hope, I look forward to getting involved in that in the future.
I think you can do that. We have a
Yes.
very strong mentorship program in the high
Yes.
school. And
Excellent,
so
excellent.
we've got your number now.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, give me a call. I'm ready.
We'll hear from Adriana shortly.
Yeah.
I get to ask the last question, and the question is, what questions you have of us as the board?
Well, I couldn't help but notice you're a Baldridge Award winner. And unbelievable, yeah, very, very impressive. And I am curious, do you still kind of take that framework and incorporate it into your strategic planning and you do, okay, so that's still high on the.
This was not a planted question, just so you guys know that.
Did
Oh,
you talk
yeah.
to Larry before you came in
No,
here?
No, no.
Two of us have been
But
examiners.
it's incredibly impressive. I think, maybe I shouldn't have been shocked. I was shocked to see Pewaukee. I mean, that is amazing because I even looking at, I think I looked at the list and what is Pewaukee, I think UW Stout is on there too, but in terms of a public educator, that's really impressive. And I actually read your application, so.
Oh, really?
Yes. It was very,
That
very-
is commitment.
Very impressive. But it was very impressive. I was very impressed.
Yeah, so, when you're a national winner,
Yeah.
you have at least 5 years before you can apply, and we were kind of revving up the process a little bit, and then COVID hit, and then actually Baldridge kind of put the brakes on some things last year because they're doing some retooling.
Yeah.
So at any rate, regardless, we continue to, I've been trained as an examiner. Larry's and Ryan have served as examiners. Everybody's trained on criteria. All administrators are trained on Baldridge criteria, and we use that framework in the ADLI and the LETC and all that kind of stuff as really underpins our whole strategic planning process.
That's excellent. It's something actually I forgot to note, in my professional career, I do an annual strategic planning process and budget and making sure that our budget aligns with the goals and strategy that we set forth. So I'm kind of a geek for budget, so just something to note. That's
Nice.
something that we do on an annual basis, so.
Do you have any other questions for us?
As board members, how do you find it most effective to keep a pulse in the community and with parents?
One of the things Jane and I started doing right away was going to football games.
Yeah.
And it's just out there rubbing shoulders with moms and dads and students and just being a part of them, being a part of the community. I also think volunteering is huge. Volunteering in the schools or also events where you get to rub shoulders with families.
Right. Okay, great.
I agree with that.
Okay, great. Excellent. I think that's all I have.
All right, well, we really appreciate your time and energy that you've spent in this process.
Yes.
We thank you very much.
I thank you. This is a great opportunity. And I enjoyed the process.
Matt, just to let you know, and I probably should have been saying this with every candidate, and I didn't. So the process is, now they're gonna deliberate and make a decision.
Okay.
I'll reach out in the next 24 hours to everybody and let them know where things are at. Of course, you can just watch it. I wanna know what they decide. But certainly, if not tonight, tomorrow, I'll personally be reaching out to everybody.
Sure.
That interviewed.
Okay, great.
Thank you,
Excellent.
Matt.
Well, thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Have a great
Thank
evening.
you.
Thanks
You
for
too.
your time.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
The little Baldridge thing, whoa, just like.
I got Larry excited. Do you guys want to take some time and you can figure your notes and maybe take a stretch break and those things? I thought I might reconfigure the tables a little bit.
I would love that.
So you
Yeah.
guys
So we can
could
see
have
each
a
other.
So we can
conversation.
discuss
Mhm.
easier,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yep.
Um, so take your time on that. You want to mute things for now. Yeah,
Well, it's not a closed session, though.
it's not a closed session. Yeah.
Oh.
You could leave, you could just leave it running and.
And just mute it so they see what we're doing.
All right, so again, in your folders, you have an initial ranking form. Again, this is entirely up to you if this is how you want to proceed. And then, of course, a final ballot. We've had 7 candidates, so it can be very helpful to kind of narrow the discussion down to who you view as top candidates. If you want to have discussion first, obviously you can do that. If you have a pretty good idea of who your top people are, the suggestion here is that you kind of pick your top 2 and you give a 2 to your highest rated and a 1 to your second rated. And then we just do kind of a score, and you can get an initial tabulation, say as a group, this person has the most points, this person has the second most, maybe this person has the third most, and then you can kind of get a sense of where the board's at. And then you can have that discussion. You could choose to rate 3 if you want to go 3, 2, 1. You could do that as well.
Just to be clear, though, it's not like golf. 2 is the better number.
Right, yeah, I may had that messed up last year. That only works if you rate everybody. You
Yeah.
have the golf scoring, so. So if you wanna, rate the top 2, then and again, that doesn't prevent you from talking about somebody else. It doesn't prevent you from voting about somebody else if through the discussion you change your mind. But if you would like to do that, you could kind of, and if you're prepared to, you could do your top 2 unless you decide as a group you want to rate more. I can collect and do the tabulation for you and just kind of let you know where things stand.
So what was the point Brian was making about the 2 is?
So the 2 is your 1, and your 2, so your top rated person you would
It's
put
the
a 2.
most points, right? So
Gets the higher.
the higher points. in terms
Yeah,
of it.
so, and everybody else just gets, there's no points because they're not rated. So you put a 2 by your first rated person and a 1 by your second, then I'll just kind of add the score because Jane's highest rated person might be your second, so they're getting 3 points. So,
I would like to have conversation before we
Yep.
rank. I'll start out by saying, I said this last time, I can't believe individuals that come forward for these positions. I mean, it's just, there's something about each and every one of them that I find beneficial to serving on this board. I have a question for all of you that I would really appreciate your thoughts on. We know that this person will need to run in the spring. One of my struggles is then, do I want to try and fill this with the person that can hit the ground running as far as that goes, or am I really looking for a skill set that I see long-term? Neither one is a losing situation. I'm not trying to say that like I'm taking a person that's less qualified, but I'm trying to figure out, is there a priority to us or to me? I love your input on that. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do, I understand, because I'm struggling with the same thing, because as a new board member, you put in a lot of commitment, and as a board, you have to build that relationship, and we now have 6 months to build that relationship, and then it's decided by the community who is on the board. So, luckily, though, we have had a pool of candidates that are all so great, but yeah, I see what I know exactly what you're saying is who will be elected, and,
Well, I guess that is my question. Okay, maybe you were gonna say this. I'm sorry, Brian.
Yeah, all these guys came here knowing what they have to do. So, I mean, cards, chips will land where they land. I'm looking for somebody that has experience that's not on the board, somebody that has different perspective. Whether they win or not, no, I hope they do, but I'm looking for somebody that complements the rest of our experience. So, things like special needs or, other exposures that most of the parents don't get, that's what I'm looking for.
Brian, I couldn't say it better. I think it's like you were saying, Stacy, it's looking at considering who the community would more likely vote in because it meets the skill set that they're looking for. And as you say, someone who brings in that diverse skill set that we don't already have on the board that can build upon the great thing we already have.
I think your focusing too much on worrying about the election part of it. I think you just go after the best candidate, you know, and just like in business, you hire somebody that's the best candidate, you know, maybe 6 months they leave, unfortunately, but, you know, you always go after the best candidates, so.
From my perspective, ideally, yes, that would be the kind of the way that you'd want it to work out. But right now, we have to kind of deal with the candidates that came forward, and then kind of collectively, what is it that will be the most reflective or the best kind of candidate for now in terms of what's there? And obviously, that person is gonna have to make a decision, I think between now and like the end of December, to decide to put their name in to run in April, just like Brian and I have to put our names in to rerun again for April as well. But hopefully they can, like you say, hit the ground running. I mean, we've got an open slot. We have lots of things that are here, and it's nice to have 7 board members. So we need to fill it, and we need to fill it with I would say, the most qualified candidate that I think is representative of the community as a whole. Because I would like to think that our community is saying, okay, the 6 of you are making this decision. Make sure that you're picking somebody that is representative and has interest and passion and fits kind of within the Pewaukee School District. And boy, that's a tough one because we had really good candidates that fit a lot of those different, like in my mind anyway, different aspects or perspectives in our community, so.
Things that I liked about all of the candidates is they all had children in our school district.
Yep.
I think that's something our board is lacking right now.
Okay. Frank, is there anything else you want to discuss?
Want to talk about candidates, or you want to just go to the voting?
We can talk
Larry,
about
which-
candidates.
Yeah, and I think some of it, I mean, again, we look, some of us, we don't necessarily know each other as well. I didn't necessarily know that totally Bryn was a nurse background kind of thing. But I think that's one of the things that plays in my mind. I mean, what is it, the kind of educational backgrounds, or what kind of work do we do? What industries do we work in? What are those experiences that really come forward? And how do we kind of, again, sort out of the people that came forward, put their names in to run for this? Is that something that we need to kind of recognize? And I have no offense against any of the accounting folks here, or Brian and I are engineer types, and we're kind of an analytical, retentive board probably, from the standpoint of how we approach our decision-making and problem-solving. So to some extent, that's maybe why some of these folks are gonna kind of surface or rise to the top. But again, I mean, are they fitting into some different categories or groups that we want to make sure that we have representation for? And so I think that's just something we need to keep in mind is, again, are we open, and do we accept kind of like the different diversity? I think you raised that too, as the diversity of things that are out there. And it is changing, so yeah, I don't know. It's not necessarily good or bad. It's just, I think it's one of those things. The other one that I typically look at, and it's kind of in my map, is it's like, okay, well, we have the Springdale, and we have Lake Park, and we have Steeplechase, and we have now Victoria Station in my area, and Jane and I both happen to be in that station. But do we have people from the different geographic locations, and again, in our community, and is that important for us? So it's just something that's there, and I don't have a map of where they're all located, but.
I
Does
took
it
a
put-
look at that too, because I think that's interesting as well, to represent all areas of our community. And it looked like most of these applicants were different from where all except for, I think there were some, I think there are a couple in Springdale Estates and Deer Haven and Steeplechase.
Yeah.
And so that was interesting to see that they would bring in the representation from those different neighborhoods.
We're a pretty small community. Is that really that diverse there, you think?
I don't know that diverse as much as just making sure that we bring the community voice, and I mean, bringing those neighbors, representing those neighbors. I mean, it's like representing different areas of the state. I mean,
Well, everybody serves at large, so that's,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's one of the things out there, and again, this just kind of comes to mind. I know that, I think the Brookfield School District has designated seats, and Menominee Falls went to something along those lines too. But if we can kind of keep in mind that we do have different communities or subdivisions that are out there, And if that's an important factor, I don't know. And again, I don't have my map in front of me and I don't know exactly where all these people live, but, you know, if we all lived in Springdale Estates, it's like, oh, okay, well, that may or may not be the right mix, so. But,
Larry, we overlapped there.
yeah, we do. But
Oh, dear.
One thing I'm considering is, what are the areas where, you know, when we consider our student body, that we may have current issues or issues going forward, and you know, areas that we want to concentrate on. So many of them brought up mental health, and I do think that is huge. And we're dealing with a lot of that right now. And so that is maybe a skill set that we don't necessarily have on the board, and maybe it's good to look at, consider someone that has that background in dealing with mental health, because it is such an issue. Just a thought.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
just think we have such a good program going. We've got a lot of those resources with the third-party relationships we have. If we ever needed to hear from them, we could always invite them to a board meeting, so.
I don't think that's the same, Brian.
Even you could say that for anything,
Could
then,
say that we
really.
To
talked
say that
about-
for finances, I mean, we've got John, who could be more skilled, and yet we have a lot of financial people on the board, so,
but kind of.
That's not why you were driven to be on the board, was it?
no.
Check on the financial? Okay.
No, but like
No.
you guys mentioned when I came on the board that John's, a big part of his contribution was that he had a special needs child.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
we don't have that right now. I mean, the argument could be, well, we can just bring Anthony in when we want to talk about those issues.
You.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. I mean,
But John's perspective was always very insightful, and some of this is like when John first got on the board, I think he was elected, he and I drove to a WSB conference up in Baraboo or someplace up there. But I really learned a lot about his perspective as being a parent and what he had to do in terms of being able to address the needs of a special needs kind of child, and working with the teachers, working with the student services, and just those things. I mean, that he always brought that to the table. And so those are some of the things, it's like, okay, I mean, how do you kind of grasp that? Because it doesn't come through from Anthony or anybody
I
else.
totally
It's just,
agree.
it's a parent's perspective on it. And I think sometime in that process, we had a couple of situations where parents were coming forward because they had special needs children and they were like concerned about what was going on. And that was helpful to have that perspective and kind of the struggles that kids go through, but yeah.
I agree. I think we missed John's perspective on that.
Yeah.
got someone now,
Special services.
Yeah, we have someone now, though.
very much so.
Stacy is
I am
involved.
in the
Yeah,
thick of it.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
Help you navigate
and in
that.
fact,
Just-
Bren has his grant, I think, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
my grandson is special needs.
so we have that perspective now.
So, vote.
Ready to rank?
Want to do your initial, like we talked about, the initial, and then kind of see where it's
Yes,
at?
I think so. Do you guys agree doing the initial to try and narrow the field?
Yeah.
Sure.
let's narrow
And
it
are
down.
we gonna do the top two or top three?
Oh, would you like to do 3?
I just thought I'd throw it back out there. I don't know. I'm happy to do two.
I think from last time, you did
We
two,
did
right?
two.
And you did end up with 3
Yeah,
candidates, right?
Because you
'Cause-
probably have some differences. So
Yeah.
you could have 4, or
Yeah,
I mean, if you do the top 2, you might end up with 4. Rise to the top, depending on how consistent you guys are.
Where you going? Yeah. it's- I'm like, where's he going?
I always think it's funny you have Danielle, you have John sitting right there, too. He's the math
Yeah.
guy. He probably wants a break from it.
That'll be the day when John starts talking about curriculum.
Tell you, with those learning walks, though, he's learned a lot.
So Sarah's in Missouri, about to play our first games this weekend,
There you go.
and my Wi-Fi sucks.
Oh, no.
Why
is that?
No, that's
I'm
hard.
on Spectrum, my house is, what are we, at 40 years old?
I know, we get dropped all the time, you too?
I see so many complaints on like Springdale Estates and all that stuff, so I'm like, I get that solicitation mail from Spectrum, I'm like, no way.
I mean, they claim it's not them, so they claim it's the service that we have, like the people who installed our
Box,
routers and,
Yep.
the-
Oh, okay.
hubs, yep.
yeah.
You know, we
hubs.
have Spectrum, and we have no trouble with it whatsoever.
Well, I might be coming to your house tomorrow night.
And all those storms that we've had lately, we've not lost our electricity either.
There's a whole bunch of complaints on Facebook.
We have problems with Spectrum, whenever it wasn't, like, out for like 6 hours or something.
I mean, Wi-Fi or cable? Both,
Wi-Fi.
both. Yeah, I'm having a watch party, so this will be interesting if we're actually able to watch.
Get a
God, that would
super
suck.
hotspot there, right? Pull it up.
The phone, I know, I asked Mark that, I said, if I have my phone, he's like, I don't know if your phone will be able to handle it. Yeah,
That
Right.
would be terrible.
Based on your initial rating, Ashley was the highest, 7 points. Zach was second with 4. Clinton was third with 3. Matt was fourth with 2. And Jamie and Dan each had 1.
So there were, what were the numbers?
So, Ashley had 7. Zach had 4. Had 3. Matt had 2.
Those numbers add up.
well, no, it's not gonna add up.
Well, no, because then
'Cause he
Dan,
didn't
Dan
give
had
you all
1,
your-
Dan and Jamie each had 1.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 18 makes sense. I'm not an accountant, by the way, just so you know that.
I wasn't auditing Mike, I didn't feel the need to, Larry. But I'm glad you did.
I just don't want any
We're all
fraud.
here if
you
you
know
want to check my
fraud.
math.
Right.
Well, I have to say that you all think a lot like me.
I'd agree.
Did we even know we need to go to a final?
So, to kind of put it in another perspective, 3 of you had Ashley as your top. 1 of you had Clinton as your top, and 2 of you had Zach as your top.
All right. I think that Ashley was incredibly prepared. I think there's great value to having someone in that field on our board. I think that Zach is the one that could hit the ground running. He obviously knows as much as, if not more than us, about this district.
Yeah, it's certainly a unique experience having worked right on the ground there, right? It's
I
kind of
thi-
like Jeannie, you know? She brings that everyday experience.
I think that Clinton, his business background and his, one of the things that I appreciated, and this may seem like a small thing, was that he has one child that's on the higher end spectrum and one child that's struggling a little bit. And I think that's, just a great parent perspective to have, to understand both realms of the student population. Yeah, I guess that's my 2 cents worth.
I have to agree with Ashley. I thought all of her answers she was prepared and well thought out, as well as taking that extra step to research in addition to digging into policy, I believe she said. And then again, the mental health aspect, I think would be beneficial.
I also liked her involvement with Insight and being a mentor. It just kind of demonstrates her level of commitment to our kids.
I have similar thoughts in terms of that. It was just in terms of, I mean, how do we kind of make sure that we bring that in and that she serves the board at the board level kind of thing? And that insight will be great. No pun intended on that one in terms of what's there, but just the idea and knowing that it's a statewide issue, it's a local issue, and pretty much all of the candidates mentioned something relevant or related to mental health is out there, so. But, and do we need an official motion on this, or is it just?
Well, then, I mean,
First have to pick
the
somebody.
idea is,
Yeah.
I would have you guys, continue your conversation, then you have to formally vote. Yeah, so this is just your initial ranking, you still have to formally vote. You can choose how you want to do it, you can do it through the ballot that's been provided, if you want to do. And again, I don't know if you're done having a conversation, but.
Jeannie?
I'm not having a conversation. I don't know how we want to vote, though.
I just do the ballot thing.
Okay, we
I
can do
just,
the
and
ballot.
on the ballot, just pick one person.
Yep.
And then I can,
Out of all the people there, Zach has a unique experience and certainly can hit the ground running, so if you want to get back up to speed, Zach would be the.
then we can see where you're at, and if there's a majority, then you've made your selection. If you're tied, then more discussion and you can revote. If you ultimately remain tied perpetually, then you actually draw from a hat.
The hat thing would narrow it to the two,
2 or 3, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's not the whole pool.
No.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's who you're tied over.
Got it. Okay.
Pick somebody that didn't get a single vote,
Yeah.
But mathematically, if we had one person who got 7, potentially, right, so.
Well, what I would say is, go ahead and vote if
Right.
you're ready to vote, and then we'll see where you're at. And then, you can vote as many times as you want.
When if you look at it the other way, Larry, 3 people gave Ashley a 2, but 2 people gave Zach a 2, so that's kind of close.
Okay. Highly qualified, in my opinion.
Oh, this is mine too.
All right.
Congratulations, Ashley, if you're watching out there.
Yeah.
And thank you to
Double
everybody.
check.
Yeah. Do you want Larry to audit you?
What's the total count? That's all I need to know.
We need someone
4-2.
unbiased. We'll have Jordan come in and audit it.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mike,
Thank
for
you.
your help.
Now, Mike, we have to make a motion.
A motion?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Let me pull up the.
I don't, wait, maybe we don't.
Policies in here, right?
I have it right here.
Well, it's interesting. So this was in the notes from last year. The Board of Education members discussed their top 2 candidates and voted using a signed paper ballot. And then, okay, first was selected, but so I'm writing in the name, but was selected as a person to be appointed to the school board, Pewaukee School District Board of Education, based on a signed paper ballot vote of 4-2. This is from last year, or whatever it was.
So it wasn't a motion, it was just declaration.
vote.
It's just the
It
vote.
was a vote.
I don't see anything in the policy that talks
I
about
don't,
a motion.
there's nothing that requires a motion. You completed a ballot, and so you
Okay.
made your selection. I think it's as much like when you appoint an officer.
Okay. All right. I want to thank you all. Good conversation. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Well, it's a good problem to have when you have so many qualified